Greetings, everybody. Brother Goodwin here, Prophecy in the Spotlight. Let me read a verse for you. We're going to continue today with Daniel chapter 8, where we were last week. I want to read verse 19, Daniel 8:19. And he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. Now listen to this. For at the time appointed, the end shall be. Wow. I want you to get, if you got a piece of paper and a pen, I want you to write Daniel 8:19. I want you to look at that later. And I want you to write a reference that I have written in my Bible here, Proverbs chapter 7, verse 20. It says about the good man that's gone. Remember, the woman shows up enticing the man, or the man's on the street and the woman's up in the window, and she invites him in. You know, she says, for the good man he's gone on a journey. He'll be back at the day appointed. It's very similar here. You know, this thing about the end time, it's all set. You and I don't know, but he does. And he created this universe, I believe, inside of time and space to last a specific amount of time. And that's it. 7,000 years counting the kingdom age. Which means at the end of the 6,000th year, the kingdom will begin. How close are we to that? Very close. The calendars are messed up. It's hard to be exactly sure where we are. But one thing we do know, he's coming soon. He's coming at the day appointed, and that day is coming upon us very soon. We're going to continue in Daniel chapter 8 today. Doc is in the studio, and we're going to talk about some signs of the Antichrist and things like that from a man named Antiochus, Epiphanes. You've heard that. Maybe you're confused about that. We're going to try to clear that up for you today. So the music's going to come on, and we'll be right back in just a moment. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. We're going to continue this week where we left off last week. We're going to review just for 2 minutes or so. We want to remind you that we are viewer-supported here at Prophecy in the Spotlight. And the networks that we're on, they expect to be paid. It costs a lot of money to be on national television. And the other networks we're on a lot of different networks. And we're dependent upon you, the viewer, the listeners, to help out if you can. We need people to partner with them. We have a lot of people who do that, and the bill comes every month or so. We have a bill that's due, and if you can help, if you'd like to talk to us, we'd love to chat with you, tell you what we're doing here, what our vision is, what we're all about. You can ask us anything you want. We would love to have your ear for a few minutes and explain to you what the ministry is all about here. And Doc and I get no salary here at Prophecy in the Spotlight. We do this for free. And we have our own ministries on the side. And we do this because we believe God's called us to do this, to get the word out there here in these last days that Jesus is getting ready to split heaven wide open and meet us in the clouds, take us out of here. I don't know about you, Doc, but I'm ready.
I'm ready for that like the lightning out of the east.
Yeah. And now there's some people that I'm concerned about that I'm afraid are not ready for that, and I'd like to have some more time, but he's coming at the day appointed. There's no stopping that. And we don't know the exact day that's going to happen, or the day. We may not even know the exact year, but we know this: we're getting close. So we're going through the book of Daniel. I have a Daniel study guide here that I wrote. 162 pages. Doc has a DVD and some other things that are on the website on the book of Daniel. It'll be very helpful to you. Doc, Daniel is a very important book when it comes to prophecy. I don't think you can fully understand Revelation without Daniel.
Right.
And especially Daniel 9.
When someone calls a Bible teacher or a pastor, says, I'm getting ready to teach through the book of Revelation, my first thoughts is always out of two or three, but number one is, have you considered a thorough study of the book of Daniel first?
Yeah.
because they're so tied together that without having a good understanding, particularly of even what we're talking about here in 8th chapter.
Yeah.
Man, there's so many things. And another thing, Dan, it's interesting when you do a little history of all of this. There were times whenever they put the book of Daniel in with the book of histories, because it is such a history book. And then they battle, well, does it belong in the book of prophecies? And finally, that's what won out. Because the chapter we'll get through next week, chapter 9, that's the one in there that really is like a chapter by itself outside of the rest of the book about a timing for Israel.
Yeah. And Daniel 9:24-27.
Yes.
The most important passage probably in the Bible to understand end-time events.
And that's what's foreshadowed that we touched on last week, and we ran way out of time. That foreshadowing of epiphanies, that simply means a name or a title that God is declaring himself to be God. And then the timing of the chapters. Let's bring this out again, but we talked about it a couple of times in sessions past, that when you get to chapter 5 and 6, you realize that these chapters, when you study it a little closer, are not in chronological time. Because you have the story in chapter 5 of the ending of the Babylonian kingdom. And here in chapter number 8, you're in the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar.
Right, verse 1 in chapter 8.
Yeah.
In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar. That's the Babylonian kingdom.
So when we read over in chapter 5 that the handwriting on a wall, Daniel has probably, this vision of chapter 8 must still be fresh on his mind.
Yeah.
And he knows that the ram that we talked about last week, that's got one bigger horn than the other, he knows that that's the vision he got prior to this, found in chapter 7, of the bear whose one shoulder was bigger than the other. He knows that's the Persian kingdom. He knows that the Persians are working hard at overthrowing the Babylonian kingdom. Mm-hmm. So when he sees that writing on the wall, he knows what it means. You've been found wanting and weighed in the balance. And he was easy to say, here it comes. Your demise is here.
All right. Well, Doc, let's go a little further here, and because we didn't feel like we got far enough, so we decided to do a second week on this.
It's important what we're getting ready to, I think, talk about.
Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7 are so critical to the entire book of Daniel and history itself. Mm-hmm. They give the whole history from 605 BC to the end of to the Kingdom Age. Yeah. The stone cut out without hands. And
the millennial reign.
Yeah. And this story in chapter 8 takes place at the end of the 3rd kingdom, which is Persia. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, the 2nd kingdom, I'm sorry. You got Babylon, then you got the Medes and the Persians, then you got Greece, then you got Rome, and then the revived Roman Empire were just about there.
In this 8th chapter is the unveiling of what begins with the Persian kingdom at the end of the Babylonians. That's the ram with 2 horns. That's destroyed with a goat with 1 horn, which is Alexander the Great in the Greeks. And it even brings you all the way up to almost the time of Christ in some events in the history of Israel.
Though they're not mentioned, they're fighting the Romans at the end of the chapter here. So you got the ram, which is Persia. The 2 horns of the ram are the 2 lead, Darius and Cyrus, basically. The goat comes along, that's Greece. The horn is Alexander the Great, the leader of Greece. And we talked about the death of his father, and then he takes over at the age of 20. Yeah. And within a few years, by, I guess, 322 BC, he becomes the leader of the world as they knew it in that day. Yep. And
he only lived, age 34?
Yep. And he's known in history as Alexander the Great. Mm-hmm. Died at the age of 34, and his 4 generals will divide up the land, and they'll rule the kingdom.
Because when you're studying in prophecy, horns, mountains, trees, maybe others are not thinking of them, but all three of these are always used symbolic of kingdoms. And so the horns is a picture of the power and authority of a kingdom.
Yeah, then the timeline in chapter 8 moves to the future near the second half of the kingdom.
Yeah.
Or near the end of the kingdom, really.
Because it brings you actually the little horn that rises up out of those four horns. I know everybody says, well, that's the Antichrist because that's the little horn. Well, yes and no. Because this little horn that we see here, we have the benefit of looking back through history. That little horn was going to be a man who's going to call himself God manifested. And he is going to do some things because he hates Israel. And he's not much different than the spirit of the Persian fallen angel, evidently, that's behind what we're seeing today.
Yeah.
Why does Iran hate Israel so bad? I mean, what have they done to them?
Yeah.
And so it is out of the Seleucid Empire, one of the four kings of Alexander, that eventually, through wars and battles, through that lineage is going to come the beginnings of the Roman Empire. And we think of the Roman Empire as something that's in the year 300s. No, that's when the Roman Empire was morphed together with
religion.
a supposed religion. They called it Christian, but it wasn't Christian. The Roman Empire had been going for almost 200 years or so before the time of Christ. And so this little horn is actually a picture of the Antichrist. It's amazing how God gave a prophecy. We call it a dual prophecy. But it's amazing. God gave us a prophecy and gave you an event and the actions of that event as a picture of what's going to come later that's even greater in scope than this.
Now, I have a chart on page 105. The world kingdoms, 605 Babylon, 536 BC, Media Persia. Greece, 322 with Alexander the Great. Rome, 63 BC. So Christ comes on the scene 30 AD. He's 30 years old when he comes on the scene. And so it's almost 100 years.
This is all morphing together here.
So Rome and Greece existed together.
Yes.
Were fighting each other. And
Yes.
eventually Rome overtakes them in probably 63 BC. The Antichrist kingdom, the date of that is still to be determined. But it's been already determined up there.
Well, his kingdom, I believe, is already here. His reign just
and I
hasn't
can tell you when
yet.
Christ's kingdom starts, the year 6000. That's when
Amen.
that one starts. Now, where are we on that timeline?
And I had somebody ask me the other day, and you get questions too. A serious individual, and I'm not. Don't get me wrong, but because they listen to a lot of programs like ours. And the question was, is it really going to be a resurrected David sitting on his throne? There's not going to be such thing as reincarnation. And the prophecy never was about David, but a descendant of David to sit upon his throne.
Yeah.
And Christ is in that physical realm when you look at Matthew's account of the lineage of Christ.
Yeah.
But yes, that kingdom's coming.
So so Antiochus Epiphanes, a name that most prophecy people know the name. They may not understand it all. They may not be able to sit down and explain it to somebody. So I want to put this on the bottom shelf. He came through them one of those four generals.
Yes, his lineage.
The lineage of him.
There you go.
This man comes along. The piece of property that he's the head of, because he's one of them four. That still exist. Those four leaders ruled.
And it's rapidly becoming the most important. Strong
and
one.
it just so happens that Israel is in that realm that and I have a picture of that in the book, the realm that this one guy was over. And he had a hatred for the Jews. There may be a reason for that.
Well, I think the reason was the Jews, ever since they went back after the Persians let them go back, from that point on,
They want to be.
they want to be self-ruling,
sovereign.
sovereign again.
Yeah.
And so they're constantly fighting the powers to be.
And they're talking about a prophesied king that's going to come and set them free.
Yeah.
And,
And at that time, they were looking at Daniel's prophecy, trying to do the math. Though we know by 134 AD, they really monkeyed with their math to try to prove that at the time it was it. So they've always wanted it. Even in the time of Christ, one of the apostles was one of those. We would call him a terrorist, so to speak, today.
This man is called the little horn in Daniel 8:8 and 8:9, but we know he's not the little horn of chapter 7.
No.
That's the Antichrist.
That's right.
But the fact that he's called the little horn is a sign here that
It is
he is a
symbolic.
type and shadow
Yeah.
of the future one.
And
at
it's
the
the
end
fact
time.
that he has risen out of this beast, because the Antichrist is going to be the one that rises as the 8th kingdom of those Gentile kingdoms that are listed in the book of Revelation, the 8th kingdom.
Yeah. So Daniel has the vision just before the Persian Empire stormed the city.
Yep.
It happens just as God said, the handwriting on the wall, you're found wanting, that
Yep.
Belshazzar is going to be killed.
Yep.
And the Persians and the Medes are going to take over. Daniel's going to have favor. He's going to
He's going to
He's gonna be
continue.
used again.
He's going to continue ruling.
The next chapter 6, the lion's den. Daniel's in
That's
great favor with Darius.
That's toward the end of the of that Persian reign through there. He'd been there. Daniel's might have been 80 years old by the time of that Daniel lion's den story.
The great horn is broken. That's not to be confused with the little horn. The great horn is Alexander the Great, and so that horn is broken off. The 4 generals take over, and through 100 years or so later, this event takes place.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you read the event. He causes the desolation at the temple. And so a lot of people get this mixed up with the Antichrist that's in the future, who's going to cause the oblation to cease.
And when you read through here, there are verses that you read, and you know this can't be him. This is pointing to somebody else.
But
That's that dual prophecy.
By the time of Christ, about maybe 200 years after this event takes place, you're going to find that when Jesus refers to the abomination, in Matthew, I don't remember what chapter it is, but Matthew records Jesus saying, as it was recorded in Daniel, talking about the desolation and
I think it's Matthew 24.
abomination. And so it's recorded. It's something that they can relate to from their history, but at the same time, if Jesus is saying it, it's because it's a prophecy that wasn't just about what happened historically at that time. It's about something that is yet future to happen, and is still yet future to us.
Now look, let me just read some of this. We read earlier, at the time appointed the end shall be. This is chapter 8. Now verse 20. The ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. Verse 21, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king, Alexander. Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, those the 4 generals.
4 generals.
4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance, and understanding dark sentences, shall stand up. Now that's the Antichrist, but it's also Antiochus.
It was Antiochus.
Yeah.
In this place, but it is a picture of the Antichrist yet to come.
In verse 24, and his power shall be mighty. See, these are attributes not of Antiochus, but the man of sin.
That's where people can get mixed up here.
Yeah. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He's going to be Satan's power. Yeah. He shall destroy wonderfully. He shall prosper and practice. He shall destroy. You look at any commentary on the Antichrist, they'll be quoting this for the Antichrist. And it's true, but it's not just the Antichrist.
It's the character traits of the Antichrist to come. But this is a real man at that time.
He shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. He's going
Yep.
to try to kill all the Jews. And through his policy also, he shall cause craft to prosper.
Yep.
People, that's
I use that all the time.
Sure.
You hear me?
Yeah.
One of the things the Antichrist is going to do is help the people's economics of the world.
Yeah. In his hand, and he shall magnify himself.
But if you do, listen, if you do a little history, you realize that some of this could not have been fulfilled
with Antiochus. Yeah. And by peace shall destroy many. I mean, that's right out of Matthew 24.
Yeah.
He, when they say sell peace, then sudden destruction, and
yeah, that's 1 Corinthians chapter 5.
He shall also stand up against the prince of princes.
Yep.
Well, that's Christ.
Yep.
Well, Christ isn't here yet.
Yep.
So the dual prophecy here, very important.
And there's another thing. I don't want us to run out of time on it, but it talks about the 2,300 days that are inserted in here. I should have written it down where that phrase is anyway. This is not my normal study Bible. This is a one I just keep here. But 2,300 days between, what's going to happen is Antiochus is going to set up a picture of Zeus in the temple, and then he's going to offer pigs on the altar. And this is going to carry on for almost 4 or 5, some say as much as 7 years. It's a lengthy period of time when this desecration and abomination has taken place. And if you've studied your Bible or history, you know of the Maccabees. And this is when they rise up. He dies, and the Maccabees win a short victory. They take all the stones that have been polluted and they put them in a place because they say that we don't know what to do with them. They were the original stones put in here. We don't know what to do with them, so they put them in a safe until a prophet in the future would tell them what to do with them. But it had been polluted, so they brought new stones in, rebuilt the altar, and sanctified it all in order to go back. It's amazing from the day, they say, you put the math together, from the time of the first pig's offering to the day of the dedication of the new altar was exactly 2,300 days.
Okay.
6 years, 3 months, and 18 days.
And the verse is verse 14, but
Okay.
let me read in verse 11. Yea, he magnified himself,
Yes.
even to the prince of the host. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. You can go to Matthew 24 and see
Yep.
that. And Matthew 24 says, see Daniel.
And that's exactly what Antiochus did.
Yeah. The daily sacrifice taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down, and an host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of the transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation? That's abomination of desolation. To give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. Verse 14 is the verse you're talking about.
That's the one I was
He said
looking
unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed.
Yeah.
And it came to pass, verse 15, when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, he's going to send somebody. And then listen to this. In verse 17, so he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid. I fell upon my face. But he said unto me, understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision.
It's amazing.
The vision's talking about the end time.
And next week, when we get to chapter 9, we're going to find the same Gabriel is going to visit again and give another vision and understand. But 2,300 days, he gave them. Here's the thing about it that I think is important. God demonstrated and he did exactly what the Bible said physically. And it was exactly 2,300 days. God, man, aren't you glad you serve a God who knows exactly the days and exactly the beginning and the ends?
Well, let's close with this, and then we've got a few lessons here. I highlighted this in the book after Daniel 8:23 to 27, which we didn't read all that yet, but Daniel was he fainted, he was sick certain days. God's going to tell him some terrible things here. Yeah. By peace shall destroy many, he shall stand up against the prince of princes, he shall be broken without hand. Daniel gets sick and faints hearing this. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick. Verse 27, certain days afterward I rose up and did the king's business, and I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it.
Right.
See, it wasn't for them.
It was for the last
because he
generation.
says
it's for a time future.
So I wrote this. Keep in mind, you and I are reading the account of this terrible bloodshed via words and symbolism. We're talking about Antiochus defying the temple. He killed them and defiled it. Many were killed.
Oh, yes.
And Daniel, you and I read this, but Daniel's seeing this in a vision.
Yep.
Kind of like seeing a live video of it all. This would explain his reaction. I'm not saying he saw actual people in his vision. I believe he probably saw the symbolism that he wrote about, but he knew what it meant.
But the angel gave him enough understanding to know that it was of men.
Yeah, I mean, he was sick certain days. He fainted. He had to have known that it was his people dying here. Yeah. And I believe he saw symbolism as we're reading it, but these were his people. And it must have been more vivid to see in this vision that he had. And so let's close with a few lessons here. Number one, kings and kingdoms come and go. Yes. They come and go. They come for a while and they're gone. And number two, keep your focus on God's kingdom. Mm-hmm. That's the important thing. Lay up not up for yourself treasures upon earth in this kingdom. Absolutely. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven. Mm-hmm. And number three, God often uses tyrants to do his will. Yes. He uses a Nebuchadnezzar, uses a Hitler. Yes. And number four, we overcome evil with good. Mm. And lastly, kingdoms are represented by wild beasts because kingdoms cannot be tamed. Yeah. And as a wild beast cannot be tamed. Right. And I like this. David, after being sick for a few days, it says, afterward I rose up and I did the king's business. Yep. This is what God's people need to do while we're here. We need to be about the king's business. Absolutely. And realize that this whole vision, he closes it out in 26, shall be for many days. In other words, it's really way out in the future from that point. It's not way out there today. Yeah. We'd love to hear from you. Contact us, call, email, send a message. We'd love to talk to you. So until next time, keep your eyes on them skies.